Hello, my name is Zainab Mahmood. I'm from It's Freezing in LA. You can find me on Instagram at zainab.slow.fashion. Today I'm speaking to Scarlett Westbrook, who is a climate activist and spokesperson for the UKSCN about digital climate activism. Hi, Scarlett.
Hi.
How did you get into online activism, and did you specifically choose it over other forms of activism, or was it more organic?
I think it was more organic. So UKSCN is obviously a network, as the name suggests, of students all across the UK, and we also work with FFF, Fridays for Future, all across Europe. So when we started organising the school climate strikes, we did that digitally because we couldn't see each other in person because of the big geographical distance. So that was things like organising on Zoom meetings and using Slack, which is it's like a professional Discord, which is an app for work to communicate with each other. And then obviously when COVID-19 happened, we couldn't even do the climate strikes. So we had to start finding ways to engage the public and show our activism and the messages we're trying to send, and send those to the government without doing big demonstrations. So we started having more often Zooms, but with the public. We didn't want to call them strikes because that would maybe be a bit offensive to the trade union movement, who have been doing incredible strikes for many, many years, but we didn't have anything to strike from. So they were more like discussions or learning platforms, but because they had such a big attendance from so many people, they still sent a message to politicians, even if we weren't striking from school. So we had those. And we also started doing a lot more rallies and working with a lot of other organisations, also using things like Zoom and streaming sites. And then personally, I started using TikTok this year, which is a cool app. And I usually make TikToks about the climate, and I've gotten to 15.8 thousand followers now.
Wow.
In a month, I think. So it definitely shows that there's a platform for online activism sort of content. I'm not sure if making TikToks is activism itself, but it's that sort of messaging and the sort of ideas behind it that seem to be more popular and are being popularized by social media that I think is important.
And with all those different online platforms that you use, have you experienced any issues with the algorithm, specifically on TikTok? I feel like this question might be more relevant because, like you say, you're talking about climate change on TikTok when it's a platform that was originally like for kids doing dances.
I get shadow banned a lot, like ridiculously so. I'm currently shadow banned. I think there's only been about 1 week where I wasn't, and that was right at the start, and my first video got 100,000 likes. So after that, I just was stuck in the shadow ban world, but I seem to be doing okay-ish, even if nobody can really see my videos because TikTok won't put them on the For You page or on people's following part. And they're more jokey. Like, I think it's the trends, but I try to make them in a climate way. I can't think of an example right now, but trying to make sort of climate justice discourse more accessible, I think, is really important. Because often in activist circles or even at rallies, when we talk about climate justice, we use really inaccessible language, usually centered around theory, which not everybody knows. So I feel like it's really important to break down that access barrier and talk about climate justice in a way that's accessible and understandable and relatable to everyone.
I totally agree. And on that note, I've seen people who make fun of that type of activism, like using TikTok to educate on topics like climate change. And I feel like COVID has brought about a lot more discussions about what it means to be an activist and whether someone who's on Instagram or on TikTok making this kind of content is really an activist. So have you experienced this type of criticism? Are these themes that you're thinking about when you're deciding what content you want to put out?
So I do like more traditional activism alongside this also. I contributed to the first ever student written bill, the English Climate Emergency Education Act. I'm currently working on another bill, I've met with over like 60 MPs, I think it is, talk about climate policy, and I've done lots of traditional lobbying and that sort of thing. So I do use social media as another platform, but it's not my sole one, or maybe my main one. I'm more known for the political side, which is why I think I'm not getting criticism for it, because because people can know me from the policy side, and when I'm writing laws or talking about them. And I guess that's more of a Scarlett that's catered towards adults or people who are like really interested in the climate. And then I can use TikTok for people who are interested but don't really understand it in the way that it's currently framed.
And have you seen any of that TikTok audience maybe move over into the other work that you're doing, or have your videos prompted them to go off and maybe do what you say is more like traditional activism rather than online activism?
I think with COVID, it's a bit hard because the traditional ways that young people were doing activism to do the climate crisis was usually lobbying councils and also school strikes. That's what young people are most known for. We had the largest ever climate mobilisation in September 2019, where we had 350,000 people strike. So I don't think they've been going on strike because of the pandemic, of course, but I've seen lots of people tag me when they start researching the climate more, which has been really exciting. And they've also been following the work that UKSCN and Teach the Future, which is UKSCN's daughter organisation, have been doing, which has also been really nice. So it's kind of nice to see it's not just a 15-second video, but it's something that people have actually taken interest in and are researching about.
And other than more of your work moving online since COVID, have you noticed any other changes in the way that people engage with your work with the UKSCN? Do you think people are thinking more or less about climate change? Are they more or less inclined to join movements like the ones that you're a part of?
I think this is a really interesting question. I think there's definitely a split here on what I've noticed people think. So there's maybe one side of people who acknowledge that the climate crisis is going to mean that we're going to see more global pandemics on a scale similar to or larger than COVID-19. And that's because of things like flooding, for example, making waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid more common, and other, like, because the climate will be hotter, other bacteria can live which wouldn't be like available in this climate, so there'd be more pandemics. And I think they understand that we kind of have to look at how bad our response to COVID has been and realize that unless we're prepared for the climate crisis, it's only going to get worse, and nobody wants a repeat of the last year because it's been awful. So they've started organizing more. And then there's also a side of people who can't really understand like why the climate crisis is important when there's a global pandemic going on, and they haven't necessarily made that connection. So it's a really tricky sort of a line to balance, because we don't really want to be undermining COVID-19 because it's been such a disastrous and awful thing to happen. But we also really need to acknowledge that we have to still prioritize the climate alongside COVID and understand that the climate crisis is also a health struggle. It's a health crisis too. And those things can be linked without having to like knock one of them down.
Have you spoken about that interconnectedness of COVID and climate change on TikTok?
Yes. So usually I like to talk about how about how the climate crisis is sort of a direct product of colonialism and capitalism. And I think that at first people didn't really understand that, and I got a bit of hate. But now it's seeming to resonate more with people, because I guess it's a sort of tricky link to understand, especially given the state of education around the world pretty much when it comes to colonialism.
So where can people find you on TikTok?
It's my name, so at Scarlett Westbrook.
And then how can people keep up with your other work as well?
So we have Teach the Future, which has a website. It's also @_Teach the Future on Instagram and Twitter. And they also have separate branches for countries, but they're all linked in the bio. And then UKSCN, you can find us on @Strike4Youth on Twitter and @Youth Strike for Climate on Instagram. And the 4s there are the numbers, not the letters.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.